Hello and welcome to the Success Secret podcast with your host Hussein Talib. I am excited to introduce you to a series of conversations with some of the most successful and inspiring individuals from various industries. My aim is to dive into the stories behind their success and explore the knowledge, strategies, habits, mindsets, and wisdom that have propelled their success. Each episode of the Success Secret podcast will feature a different guest who will share their unique journey, the challenges they faced, and the lessons they have learned along the way. I will also be covering topics from entrepreneurship and innovation to leadership and personal development. Whether you are an inspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business professional, or just someone looking to improve your life, the Success Secret podcast is for you. My goal is to bring you valuable insights and inspiration that will help you achieve your own success in business and life. So get ready to learn and be inspired. The Success Secret podcast starts now. In this episode of the Success Secret podcast with your host Hussein Talib, I have with me Barbara Turley to talk about how to scale smarter and faster, how to use VAs, virtual assistants, to drive operational efficiency in your business, and how to optimize for strategy and scale of the business. Barbara is the founder and CEO of the Virtual Hub, a leading virtual assistant company. She is on a mission to revolutionize the way businesses operate by eradicating business overwhelm. She helps clients to optimize their operations using offshore virtual assistants, process automations, and streamlined workflows. Under her leadership, the Virtual Hub has grown to a 350 employees company and has helped 200 plus business founders, owners, and operators work smarter and scale faster. So, Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Hussein. Great to be here.
I'm glad you are joining me for this one. So, you have, I would say, a pretty maybe big business. You have grown to more than 350 employees, which is I would say this considered a medium-sized business and up. It's not a small one, I would say.
No.
You're doing great. So first of all, you build your business. It's very, I would say, competitive. There's a lot of businesses doing I would say, generally the same thing. So before you go deeper into this, what does success means to you, and how do you see other people around you that you work with, employees, businesses, how would they define success and certain misconceptions around what success is to them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, great. So much to unpack there. I'm happy to start with myself. And actually, it's interesting that you asked me that question because I just had a moment before I joined this podcast where, and everyone will understand this, where you're looking online and someone you're following has this amazing thing that they're doing, and you start to feel like, oh, I should be doing this or that. And it made me reflect actually on what success means to me. And I think it's really important. I've always tried to do this with myself. And I would advise anyone doing business to do this. It's really important to start with your own personal vision for your life first. I find a lot of people start with the business vision and then they pair their life around that and they push their life into a way that drives that business vision. And while that might seem like a great idea for the business, often it's not a great idea for you personally. So what you have to remember is success for me is really living on the terms I have set for my personal life first. And those are things like I describe myself as a mum first entrepreneur. So for example, it's really important to me that I am very present with my children. I'm always at the school gate. I'm, this sort of thing. And I built my business in such a way that it would service that sort of a lifestyle for me. And I've still managed to build a big business that way. Now, in terms of our team and our employees, I also encourage them, like one of our biggest sort of core values and the thing that I hear from our employees the most is our focus on work-life balance. Now, I know this is a big topic out there right now. Is it work-life integration? What is it? But the feedback we get from our employees is that they like the fact that we are very focused on what's going on in their personal life and how is work serving that or not. And those are important conversations that we like to have at the Virtual Hub. And I guess it comes from my own wish to live my life that way. And I try to impart that to everyone that works with us.
Cool. So you would like to extend how you would see your own vision to the business and how you do help your clients or the businesses that you help, basically. So this is,
Yeah.
I'd say, a good vision for the business also. So now, at the beginning of the thought of starting this type of business, why did you think that you want to start this business? Did you think that have some fears? Because this is, I would say, maybe a very competitive market. Like we know a lot of people talk about, and as I mentioned in the introduction, like you basically have, I think, maybe two different types or different employees from different countries, right? So a lot of people talk about the South Asian or Indian market, that they are cheap labor or whatever compared to the Western US or whatever labor, right? So how do
Yeah.
you see that success, or how did you envision that success? And did you think to yourself like this would be a success, or did you have some fears about it failing?
Oh, all of the above. And honestly, the backstory, I'll give you the very short version of the backstory, but I did not set out to set up a VA company at all. And we are Philippines based. So we are the Southeast East Asian market. I stumbled into it because I was a business coach and I noticed that all the clients I was coaching had the same problem. I didn't even know that it was it is a red sea of competition out there. And I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know any of the difficulties about it before I started the business. And I'm kind of glad now that I didn't, because I just went in and built it my way. And I still don't really look at competitors, to be totally honest, to this day, because I've built it from day one by talking to, I call it the two heads of the beast. I talk to clients, I talk to the market, I listen deeply about the problems, because this industry is littered with problems around how do you get offshore teams to work, how do you get VAs in the Philippines to work effectively, all of the above. And there's loads of problems with that. But in addition, I spent a lot of time talking to our people. And I'm very, very interested in what it's like from their perspective. Like, why are these problems happening? Some of it is they're bad actors or whatever in the market, but often it's lack of training. It's, an inability to say no, all of these problems. And what I've traditionally done is I put all those stories together in my head and I just design the business to sort of solve for those issues. And that's really where, I guess, what drives me every day and what makes me sort of not really bother to look at the Red Sea that we're in. And in addition, like, as we've grown over the years, I've realized that actually what we're really trying to do right now, all around the world, employees everywhere are drowning in work, right? People are complaining of burnout, low employee engagement. There's all these problems being talked about around the world. And the solutions to those problems that are being presented are things like more career mentorship, more training, more. But the problem is that most people, as I said, are drowning in work already. So there's no space for more. And what we like to think that we do, and we do this for a lot of scale-up companies, is we like to say, well, we're going to step in. And at the bottom layer, there's a support layer that exists. When you think about it, in every business, in every department, in every role, there is a 20 to 50% of a role or people's day that is getting bogged down by stuff that's process-driven, trainable, and has to be done by someone, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's currently doing it. But it often doesn't warrant hiring a local role to do it. And we like to say, well, we come in that layer. When you integrate a great layer of support assistance to deal with this support layer type work, what do you actually do? You free up the time and energy of the key people in any business and allow them to go on and do the great things that they can do for that company. So I'm trying to sort of shift the narrative around what we do, essentially away from this whole Red Sea of VAs and into something more strategic around people strategy and optimization of people strategy. And that's kind of where we're going today.
Yeah. So there is a lot of things, like the way how you conduct business, or how you attract the type of clients that you want to attract. And also, yeah, like there is a lot of work. You talked about work itself, what needs to be done on a daily basis, and also improving the employees themselves. There's a lot of things that could happen. Like it's chaotic, and it's good for you to have arranged this type of place that you are in in a place of advancement in your business. So now, when a business comes to you, or when a business finds you on search engines or whatever, or a word of mouth, so how would you decide how you can help them scale or grow their businesses? Like, when a business comes to you, do they know exactly what they want, the type of, for example, VA that they want, or is there something that they think they know but they don't?
Oh, there's a lot. So, look, a lot of people find us online or, find us through different mediums. And of course, a lot of people come to us knowing not exactly what they want, but they know they resonate with the message that there's got to be a better way to do this, right? And they come in going, yeah, I need an assistant. So founders who are running around spending all the time managing their calendar or like, just running around researching things and having all these tasks to do. That's the most basic layer that we would help with, where we say, you need a great assistant to run alongside you and kind of pair with you in the chaos of startup. But when we get to a scale up phase type company, usually it's, obviously me on podcasts is a big thing, or I do a lot of speaking engagements and I talk about this challenge of most companies think that one of their greatest issues is that we need more people. You often hear that from people in companies. We just need more people. And often it's not that you need more people necessarily. You need to reorganize the chess pieces in the business around the work that needs to be done. And putting in a great, I call it offshore team strategy, but, support layer assistance, whatever you want to call it, identifying and exposing that support layer of stuff that's being done every day is really, really key. And then you can integrate into that. And I guess me talking about that resonates with companies that, are not really focusing on it. They're in scale up phase and usually there's headcount freezes or there's issues with hiring and they haven't really thought about the fact that the capacity that they are so desperate for already exists within their existing team. They've just got to unlock it, unleash that capacity.
So in that regard, if we extend that, so when this company comes and have their first VA, will it work from the first time with the first VA, or will there be some kind of disconnect? Because you mentioned that sometimes it's not about getting more people, it's about reorganizing or reorganizing the structure of things in the business. Sometimes we can delegate more things that to people you already have, right? Maybe. So how do you see this?
Yeah, so when you come and get your first assistant, I mean, the first person to usually free up is usually a founder or a C-suite person or a CEO. That's and arguably that's one of the harder people to free up because that can be quite a chaotic sort of role. That somebody really needs to fly alongside that role. But that works really well, and sometimes that is the first step when people come to us or companies. They sort of test it out themselves first, and then what you find is they start to realize this concept that every department and every role that they have in this business, no matter how big or how small the business is, it could be a business of 5 or 10 people, or it could be a business of 200 people, and you realize that there is this, I guess, this support layer that's hiding in plain sight. And I know I keep kind of coming back to this support layer thing, but how do you get it to work? That's a whole other discussion. Like, does it work? Can you hit a home run on the first one? Yes, you can. But you have to also avoid, and I guess you would probably know this problem. Sometimes people think, oh yeah, I'll just get an assistant. And you're essentially throwing a body at the problem. You're not actually putting an assistant into an operational structure and framework where they can actually be successful for you and for this whole thing to be successful. So it's not just the assistant and the support layer you need to identify and then put a person in. You also need to think about, what are the process maps? What are the systems? How are we communicating? How are we going to work in a virtual environment? And that's all operational frameworks and structure that you put people into. And I mean, look, that doesn't just apply to getting support assistance into your business. That's like running a digital first future of business type business these days where people are remote.
So now in regards to systems or options for VAs, when a company looks for one, what are the most important things that should we always be looking for about? Because when we talk about the East Asian market of VAs, a lot of people sometimes discuss that their English is not good. For example, if it's
Yep.
a US company or Australian company, for example, sometimes we need other people to have skilled or certain things or languages. So how or what are the criteria, I would say, maybe for as you as a virtual assistant hub, like the criteria that you work on to build the skills of the VAs to have the best possible match with the business?
Yes, great question. So one of the things that people often say is that, well, in the Philippines, the English is great. And I say, well, it is in some pockets. So, you've got a huge country there, you got 100 million people. 100 million people don't have great English, right? But, a lot of them are online looking for jobs and doing this sort of thing. So, look, the model that I have built at the Virtual Hub and that we're very passionate about is that we start, I mean, in our recruiting process, obviously we're not recruiting for clients. Okay, so that's number one. That's a big differentiator of what we do. We don't recruit for clients at all. And clients find that quite destabilizing. They go, what? You're not going to recruit for me? We go, no, no, no. We recruit for ourselves. We actually hire. We're going out to find great people with great attitude, great work ethic, and the smarts that we know we can train, right? And we can produce. So we sort of manufacture our own VAs, to be totally honest. But the first step in that is English. And like sometimes we've gotten people with great resumes that have all this kind of interesting stuff on it, but they're English. They just don't to pass the level of English that we need. So we need the English to be perfect. It's not near perfect. And I'm quite proud to say that the vast majority of our people at the Virtual Hub don't speak English like a second language. They speak it like a mother tongue. So there is that. There's a lot of people in the Philippines that are educated in English, and that's why their English is so strong. So you've kind of got to find that nugget, and you've got to go after that cohort first. And then comes the training piece. People can say anything on resumes. Like, let's be honest. In interviews, sometimes people are amazing in an interview, brilliant resume, and absolutely shocking on the job. And we've all hired these people, right? It's really difficult. So instead of taking that risk for clients, what we actually do is we just hire people for ourselves, and we have our own training. We've got an entire training platform with a team of trainers. We've got online courses, all this sort of thing that we've built proprietary for ourselves. And we put people into our training programs. And through that, we're trying to develop up the types of support assistance that we know the types of clients we go after are looking for. And then only after training, and we start to see kind of how they perform with us, would we attempt to start to go, okay, we think one of these or these are ready for potentially working inside our client accounts. And even still, we have ongoing training that we partner with the client on. And we've got an entire success model around that. So we put a lot of resourcing behind that.
So to get this clear, to see how your business works. So you hire the VAs for your company, and then you, let's say, forward them to other businesses who need.
Well, no, because the client pays off. I mean, when a client comes to the Virtual Hub, the client is not really, yes, they think they're coming looking for a VA at the most basic level. But actually what the client is doing is the client is partnering with the Virtual Hub. And part of that, there's an entire ecosystem that they are coming into this world if they're going to go. We're more at the premium level, of this sort of thing. So the way the industry works is at its most basic level, you can pay someone to recruit you a VA, and you pay them a fee, and that's it. You're off on your own. Somewhere in the middle of that spectrum lies the agencies that manage payroll and HR, for example, and maybe office space. And that's a managed service thing. And that's quite interesting. We're sort of the other end of the spectrum where we're saying, well, no, we're actually creating our own VAs. We train our own. We integrate them inside a client's business, but it's as part of an ecosystem that is the Virtual Hub, where we're also part of that partnership quite deeply. There's very deep client success. There's deep ongoing training in partnership with that client. So we're really trying to drive success from that point of view. And it's hard. I can tell you it's hard.
Yeah.
It's
So
hard. It takes a lot of resourcing.
yeah, exactly. Because I would say the VA would have very extensive training with you, and they will have to certain skills that the business, when they get them, they would have someone who's ready or almost ready to.
Almost ready.
Yeah.
We can't hit the ground running. We
to
don't
hit-
say that word because
no.
people think that's day one. But,
Yeah, definitely. But it's good because sometimes if when you have this kind of match, you don't want someone to like maybe train for a while to know the other business, so they have, let's say, maybe some kind of an idea of what they are going going for, right? Or what they are going to do. That's very important, this kind of, let's say, matchmaking of VAs, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And we put a lot of time and energy into that, and a lot of investment into it. The other thing that we do is all of our people are employed on full salaries and benefits from day one, and it's completely divorced from the client account. So what I mean by that is we pay that they're on our books. We take the hit for the payroll. Obviously, a client comes along and then starts to pay. But if that client cancels, that person doesn't lose their job, lose their income, nothing. They stay on our payroll, and we back ourselves to be able to match supply and demand and find more demand and get that person back into another client account. But the reason we do it that way is because, when I spoke to lots of people in the Philippines and on the employee side, one of their greatest fears is this feast or famine of freelance. And also Other companies that when the client drops, they get floated for a while and they've no income. And, they need security and certainty. And we like to think that we provide that. And we do, their health benefits and all those things are still rolling. And we take the risk on the back end that our business can cope with that.
Cool. So do you let's say, how many countries do you have, let's say, employees from, like, on just
Only one. We only do Philippines.
only?
We're only doing,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So do you think that this is the future of the business for you, or do you think that there is some kind of an extension from other places?
For me personally, getting back to how we started this conversation, my personal vision for my life comes first. I will openly share that, like any business is not easy. It doesn't matter what anyone shows on social media or these sorts of things. I have found it to be challenging enough for me personally to do one country, and I'm okay to stay in one country, being honest. Yeah. Somebody else wants to, I think there's great people everywhere. And I think sometimes we're going, oh, we can hire anyone all over the world. It doesn't necessarily make it easier or better. You just have to kind of double click and dial down and get really, really deep into one area and go like, how can we make this area work? As opposed to, oh, can't find great people there, let's go somewhere else. It's again, you're just finding bodies to throw at the problem,
Definitely. So let's say, what is the best advice that you have ever received, or and also the worst advice that you have ever received? The best and worst advice you received.
Okay, so the best advice that I've ever received. Oh, that's an interesting question. I think one of the key ones for me was when the business was a lot smaller, I was running around thinking about who I needed to hire next. And somebody said to me, what about if you imagine the business? At that point, we'd 20 staff or something. And he said, why don't you first sit down and imagine what the business structure, the org structure would look like at 100 staff? And then map that out first, and then figure out who your next hire needs to be. And that was a pretty pivotal piece of advice, actually, because I realized I was looking at all the wrong people to hire. The worst advice, look, I don't think this is necessarily advice that I got from anyone, but kind of the status quo. I was kind of told in the early days by others in the industry and people I respect, that were like, you're never going to be able to build this business if you're not on the ground and you're not there. And I was like, well, I'm going to go do it anyway. And I've pretty much proven that you don't need to be. Being physically present doesn't necessarily make a great business. It adds great connectivity, but I have built a fully remote, fully digital first type company. And, solving problems does not require you to be necessarily together. You need to get together sometimes, but it also doesn't make for the best oversight. For example, people think that just because you're in an office together and you can see someone that the work they're doing. Well, yes and no. There's all these challenges. I actually have managed to solve for a lot of those things by just not listening to the general status quo and doing it my own way anyway, Just solve for the problem that you're facing as opposed to listening to others.
No, and regarding to being in the same place or the same office, like, I would say the first thing comes to any one of us is the moral or the ethics that we have. So it does not matter whether you are in a physical place or far remotely. How you would act in your daily lives with anyone is how you would conduct business in general. So that's very important in any way. So what is the best tools, resources, or books that you would generally recommend?
Yeah, so just books first. I have a few that have been literally pivotal in my entrepreneurial journey. One of them, the first one it wasn't the first book I read, but the one that really changed the game for me was a book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. And that book literally was a pivotal moment where I sort of read it and then ripped the business apart and rebuilt it, actually, based on that book many years ago. And the other one that's very, very good book, which is a great dovetail from Scaling Up, is a book called Traction. And these books are really about, Scaling Up is very much around people. Well, it's also, there's 4 disciplines in it, but the people part was really big for me, and the strategy piece of that book. And then Traction is really about kind of how to execute, like the implementation, the integration, actually getting ops right and that sort of thing, and really how to get all that stuff right. So those 2 books for me were pivotal. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, Barbara, where can people learn more about you and see the virtual hub and learn more about what you do and be able to learn more about you?
Sure. So if you on LinkedIn, I'm Barbara Dash Turley on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about this stuff on LinkedIn right now. So if you want to follow me personally, hop over there. Or if you want to come and talk to our team, you can go to thevirtualhub.com and find out more about us there.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Barbara, for joining me for this episode of the podcast. It is very important for businesses to know when to hire the VAs, the right VAs, and with proper training that they already have from what you already have done is something can be a good match for businesses, which is any business owner at the beginning or as they are growing that they want should have also because it's the most important thing in any business is the people. I would say not AI or anything else. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.